Have you ever heard of a hero so selfless they'd let everyone think they were a villain just to help those in need?
Wow.
That's the kind of story we're diving into today.
It's a tale that really flips the script on what we think we know, especially when it comes to first impressions and judging people based on rumors.
Welcome back to Iranian Things, episode 127. I'm Q Mars.
And I'm Nowruz.
Together, we're your guides to the lesser-known side of Iran.
Exactly.
We're talking about the folklore, the mythology, even the creatures from Iranian legends that you might not find in your usual history books.
And today we've got a folktale that's all about mistaken identity, the weight of societal judgment, and a hero who operates in the shadows.
This one's got some serious moral lessons woven into it, plus a ton of symbolism that ties back to deeper cultural values in Iran.
Definitely. It makes you think about how we perceive good and evil and how those lines can get blurred, especially when reputation is involved.
We'll be unpacking all of that and more so. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment, and give us a like if you're enjoying the deep dive. Now, let's set the scene.
Okay.
Imagine it's Sizdah Bedar. That's the 13th day of Nowruz, the Persian New Year.
Right.
It's a huge celebration. Everyone's outdoors having picnics, enjoying the spring weather.
Yeah.
We've got a merchant and his wife making their way home after a day of festivities, totally oblivious to the chaos that's about to hit.
And hit it. It does.
Oh, yeah.
Picture this, a sudden ferocious storm descends upon them.
Oh.
The wind is howling, rain is lashing down, visibility is next to zero. Talk about a mood shift. It almost feels symbolic when you say like a sudden disruption of peace and order.
Absolutely. And of course, with this storm comes disaster. The merchant and his wife get separated in all the confusion.
Oh my God.
You've got children separated from their parents. Everyone's calling out for each other. It's pure pandemonium.
The merchant is frantic. Obviously, he's desperately searching for his wife, but every path he takes seems to lead him to more lost children, scared and alone.
Oh, that's awful.
So being the compassionate guy that he is, he decides to take these kids under his wing, figuring he'll reunite them with their families once the storm calms down.
Meanwhile, his wife is in a tough spot.
Yeah.
She's alone, disoriented, lost in a city that's probably not familiar to her. And it's getting darker by the minute. Can you imagine that feeling, listeners, you're vulnerable, scared and surrounded by strangers?
She eventually stumbles upon the Darugha, that's the local magistrate, a figure of authority in the community.
All right.
Now he offers her shelter for the night, promises to help her find her husband in the morning. Seems like a decent gesture, right?
On the surface, yeah, totally. But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The Darugha has a reputation.
Uh-oh.
And it's not a good one. Whispers follow him everywhere he goes.
And those whispers paint a pretty disturbing picture. People say that every night 20 prostitutes, 20 beautiful children, and 20 jugs of wine are brought to his house. It makes you wonder what's really going on behind closed doors.
Put yourself in the wife's shoes for a second.
Right.
She's terrified alone, and now she has to decide, trust this guy with a seriously shady reputation or brave the storm and the night alone? It's a classic dilemma.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough choice, and in that moment, fear wins out. She accepts the Darugha's offer of shelter, but as she steps inside his house, the apprehension only grows.
Yeah.
She finds herself in a large room with several other women, and there are all these smaller rooms surrounding a central courtyard.
Oh.
The atmosphere is thick with mystery, and it's probably making her even more uneasy.
You can almost feel the tension, right? It's like she's walked into a scene from a movie, and she doesn't know if it's going to be a drama or a horror film.
Exactly. And remember those rumors about the Darugha? Well, she's about to get a first-hand look at what really goes on.
Okay.
She starts watching him closely, her mind racing with every move he makes. He orders food for everyone, making sure they're fed and cared for. Then, to her surprise, he orders all the jugs of wine to be poured into the courtyard. Well...
Wait, what? That doesn't sound like the actions of a debaucherous villain.
Right. It's totally unexpected, and it doesn't stop there. He separates the women and children, putting them in different rooms for their safety and privacy. Then he calls for his maid and tells her to stay with the merchant's wife to offer her comfort and reassurance.
Wow.
Finally, he leaves for the night, leaving the women in the care of his maid.
Okay, this is getting really interesting. We've got this clash between the rumors about the Darugha and his actual actions. What's the deal here?
Well, the maid, sensing the wife's unease, decides to spill the tea. She reveals that this is the Darugha's nightly routine. But here's the twist. He never touches the women or the children.
Really?
He gives them shelter, protects them from harm, and in the morning, he sends them on their way with some money to help them get back on their feet.
So he's basically running a secret shelter under the guise of a scandalous reputation that's kind of brilliant and incredibly risky.
It is, think about the societal pressures he's facing. In a culture that places a high value on honor and reputation, he's willingly taking on this burden of shame to protect the vulnerable.
It makes you wonder why he doesn't just reveal his true intentions.
Maybe he's realized that the rumors actually work in his favor. If people fear him, they're less likely to interfere with his work or question what's really happening at his house.
That's a good point. He's using people's assumptions against them, turning their judgment into a shield for those who need protection.
Exactly. And it brings up a fascinating question about the nature of heroism. Does a true hero always have to be recognized and celebrated, or can they operate in the shadows even if it means being misunderstood?
That's something to think about. For sure. Anyway, back to the story. Morning arrives. And just as he promised, Darugha helps reunite the wife with her anxious husband.
Yeah.
It seems like a happy ending, but...
Well, not quite. This is where the story takes a dark turn. Remember those societal judgments we talked about?
Yeah.
They come back with a vengeance upon hearing where his wife spent the night. The merchant flies into a rage. He's completely blinded by the rumors surrounding the Darugha and refuses to listen to her explanations.
It's like he's more concerned with what other people will think than with the truth of the situation.
Exactly. The weight of societal expectations is crushing. He's so fixated on the idea of his wife being under the same roof as those women in the house of a man with a scandalous reputation that he doesn't even consider the possibility of her innocence without a second thought. He divorces her, casting her aside based solely on suspicion and societal pressure.
Talk about a gut punch. She survives a terrifying storm, finds refuge, gets reunited with her husband, and then gets rejected by him because of rumors and societal pressure. That's brutal.
It's heartbreaking, and it highlights the danger of blindly accepting societal norms without questioning them. The merchant's reaction is a textbook example of how fear and prejudice can cloud judgment and lead to injustice.
It also shows how deeply ingrained these social codes are in the culture, his reputation, his honor, his standing in the community. It's all tied to the perceived virtue of his wife, and even if she's innocent, the mere suspicion is enough to damage his social standing.
Which makes the Darugh's actions even more significant. He's not just protecting the vulnerable, he's challenging the very foundation of these societal judgments.
So what does he do? Does he let the merchant continue on this path of ignorance and injustice?
Not a chance. He sees the wife's pain, the merchant's rash judgment, and he decides to take matters into his own hands. He's not just a protector of the innocent, he's a champion of truth.
So he's not just going to let this injustice stand. What does he do? Does he confront the merchant directly?
No, he takes a much more cunning approach. He hatches this elaborate plan, almost like a play where he's going to expose the merchant's hypocrisy and make him confront his own flawed judgment.
Okay, I'm hooked. What's the plan?
He finds a woman and basically hires her to flate with the merchant in his shop. If the merchant reciprocates, she's supposed to suddenly cry out, accusing him of making unwanted advances.
Wow, so he's setting the merchant up. That's a pretty bold move, especially considering his own reputation is already on the line.
Exactly. It shows how committed he is to revealing the truth, even if it means further tarnishing his own image. He's willing to be the villain in the eyes of society, to expose the real villain, the hypocrisy, hiding behind a respectable facade.
And of course, this all plays out exactly as the Darugha planned. The commotion attracts a crowd, and who just happens to be there to witness it all.
The Darugha himself.
Right, he catches the merchant in the act and hauls him off to jail for his supposed misconduct.
And guess where the merchant ends up imprisoned in the Darugha's house? The very place he condemned his wife for entering. The irony is thick, right?
It's almost poetic justice. The merchant is now forced to experience firsthand the very situation he so readily judged.
Over the next 3 nights, he observes everything he sees. The women arrive seeking refuge. He sees the children brought in for safety. He sees the wine arrive only to be poured away. He witnesses the Darugha's care for these people, the genuine compassion behind his actions.
And in that moment, the truth hits him like a ton of bricks.
It's a classic case of cognitive dissonance, right? His deeply held beliefs about the Darugha, about the women, about the whole situation, it all comes crashing down in the face of reality.
He's forced to confront his own prejudice, his blind acceptance of societal norms, and the devastating consequences of his rash judgment.
On the 4th day, as usual, the Darugha comes to release his prisoners. But this time, the merchant refuses to leave. He demands an explanation. He needs to understand why the Darugha lives this double life, why he chooses to bear the weight of such a dark reputation.
This is the moment of truth. The Darugha, who has remained silent until now, finally reveals his motives.
He explains that he's made a conscious choice to sacrifice his reputation to protect the vulnerable. He could easily maintain a clean image, but it would mean turning a blind eye to the suffering of others. He chooses compassion over social standing, action over apathy.
It's a powerful moment, isn't it? He's basically saying that true heroism often means doing what's right, even if it's unpopular, even if it means being misunderstood.
And it's not just about protecting them physically, it's about protecting their dignity. Think about those women in a society where their reputation is everything being associated with the Darugha could ruin their lives, but he shields them, takes on that burden of shame himself so they can have a chance at a new beginning.
The merchant, hearing all of this, is completely humbled. He finally understands the depth of his mistake, the injustice he inflicted on his wife, the true nature of the Darugha's character.
And of course, the next thing he does is seek out his wife, begging for her forgiveness, and she, recognizing his genuine remorse and his newfound understanding, agrees to remarry him.
It's a classic story of redemption, but it goes so much deeper that it forces us to question our assumptions, to look beyond surface appearances, to challenge the narratives we've been fed about good and evil, about heroes and villains.
What's fascinating is that the story doesn't shy away from the complexity of morality. The Darugha uses deception, even manipulation, to achieve his goals. He's not a perfect hero, but he's a hero nonetheless.
And that's what makes it so compelling, right? It's not a simplistic fairy tale with clear-cut heroes and villains. It reflects the messy reality of life, where good intentions can sometimes manifest in unconventional ways, where the line between right and wrong can get blurry.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into this extraordinary folktale, we leave you with this question: who are the unsung heroes in our own lives? The ones who might be misunderstood, even vilified, but who are working tirelessly behind the scenes to make the world a better place.
Take a look around, challenge your own assumptions, and you might be surprised by what you discover. And as always, be sure to check out our playlist for more fascinating tales from Iranian folklore. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the rich and often surprising world of Iranian things.